On this episode of the Youth Ministry Sherpas Coast to Coast, Brock got run over by some lawnmower moms looking to cut down every obstacle in their kids' path. How can we pastor parents to build resiliency, not fragility? And as youth pastors, we're always challenging our kids to bring their friends. It's a tale as old as time. But what is our motivation? Building the kingdom of heaven or building the kingdom of our youth room? Plus, guess who's coming to dinner besides a few dead presidents? It's time for episode 8, so roll down your windows and let's get started. And welcome back to the Youth Ministry Sherpas Coast to Coast Youth Ministry with the windows down. Hey everyone, my name is Steve Anderson, and I am joined by my fabulous co-host, Shannon Dunn. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning.
And Brock Morgan.
Hey guys, so good to see your faces.
We are part of the Download Youth Ministry Podcast Network, and we are coming to you from the East Coast and the West Coast early for us on a Monday. And I can see the sleep in your eyes, Brock. You were out late last night at the Coldplay concert. Is that right?
Dude, it was so fun. Oh my gosh. And the best part was they had two middle school girls, local girls, introduce them. They're holding pieces of paper and they're so nervous. And they're supposed to say each band member's name. They can't get the name. What is the name? And they're fumbling, and we were all just like joyfully. It wasn't like making fun of them. It just felt, it was a neat beginning. As a youth worker, I was just like, oh.
How'd they get selected for that?
I don't know. But these two awkward little girls, I pulled my phone out at the end when they basically said, welcome, Coldplay. But I wish I would have videoed the whole thing because it was delightful, man. Oh my gosh.
We should take some lessons from that, right? We should have middle school girls doing announcements and everything else, right?
Right.
I mean, if they're good enough for Coldplay, they should be good enough for you.
Totally.
Yes.
That's right.
And we got the information. The band was starting. We understood.
Yeah.
They can do
awesome.
it.
That's right.
Awesome.
I like it.
Shannon, what's up with you? I heard your kid is sick.
Yeah. He's 7 months old. It's actually the first time he's been sick, so it's kind of impressive with how many germs he's exposed to, but we're surviving. He did not want to be put down last night, so I had not much sleep, which seems to be a trend for our recordings.
That's a regular occurrence for the Sherpas
A little
podcast.
beer. Just a little beer in the bottle.
Oh, I'll try that next time.
It works for me.
Well, when this show releases, I will have pulled off, hopefully successfully, a surprise birthday party for my wife.
Oh, come on.
Yes.
So fun.
I've never done that before. We're not huge birthday party people. So I've lined up. We're having it at a friend's house. They have a bigger house than we have, more space. I've invited a bunch of people kind of secretly, and I'm hoping that nobody spills the beans prior to that. But
Does she like surprises?
You know, she's not super excited about this birthday because it is ending in a 0.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what she expects, but she does expect something.
Okay.
So I think she'll be pleasantly surprised in the end. Yeah.
That's
cool.
That's super. She's going to love it.
We're doing wine tastings at the party. I haven't figured out how, but we're going to have some fun with that. So
Love it.
Good. Yeah, it'll be good
Fun.
times. Yeah.
She's going to love that. Now, you could try to book Coldplay, but that will be hard. That will be difficult. But you could probably, I bet those two middle school girls could show up. They're probably available.
Yeah, I'll check on that. We'll see. Maybe Coldplay will be in the area and they got a free night. Who knows? Could work out. We have a fun episode planned today. We're going to wipe the sleep from our eyes and have a good conversation about some interesting topics. So if you guys are ready, let's roll into segment number 1, which is a really fascinating topic, especially something we've seen in today's culture. We're calling this segment, Get Off My Kid's Lawn.
I love these segments.
Me too.
I work hard on these little mini titles.
Dude.
We live in an age of somewhat fragile parenting with the heightened awareness of mental health and academic competition. And there's all kinds of factors that play into it. And I think what we have seen identified as a bit of a cultural trend is what we call lawnmower parents, which is just a way of saying that it's easy for parents to want to remove all obstacles from their students, any kind of struggles that might appear before them, to make their life easier because they feel like that's doing the best by their kids. But, sometimes we see that may not be really in the best interest of us as we learn to be people of perseverance and strength. So I think this question or this idea comes from an experience that you're actually in the midst of right now, Brock. You want to share a little bit about what that looks like without going into too much detail about the people that are probably listening to the show right now?
Dude, it's something dealing with these parents who are mowing down every obstacle, they're not even obstacles, but anything that might be kind of interpreted as an obstacle, anything that causes any amounts of stress, we're getting rid of that. And
you have an example of that?
Well, you'll have, teachers can talk about this all day, where they'll get a B and the parent will come. I have a friend who's a science teacher in one of our local schools, and he's just like, at this point, if a parent emails me complaining, reaching out to the headmaster, the principal, I just go, okay, fine, they got an A, because I am not going to battle and fight and lose sleep over these parents who are, it's like, your kid did not do A work. This is what I've told you. They can retake. He's like, I'll say they can retake the test. That's not good enough. No, he deserved an A. And
the scary thing is that my wife sees that in first grade.
Oh,
yeah. First grade grades. What difference does that make? Who cares what grades your kid gets in first grade, other than where it shows they are on development? But the grade itself is meaningless.
It's
I don't think it's on your college applications. What did you get? What did you get in first grade social studies?
As a parent of a first grader, I'm going to sit back and let you guys tell me how I should be parenting. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes. Steve and I know how to mother children.
Yeah.
I've seen some examples. I've been running the guest services program at our church along with youth ministry for a while, and I will get emails from parents so we have a Christian college right across the way, and I will get emails from parents saying, "Hi, I want my child to go to your church. They don't have a car. How can you help them get to your church, et cetera, et cetera?" And I'm like, well, does your kid want to come to our just like, there's so much where I'm like, you got to let them do the work. They're going to come to church and enjoy it. They got to find it themselves. But so interesting.
Yeah, you don't want to, and I think that that's part of it as a parent. You're wanting to, and I actually tell parents this, you want to pray for an appropriate amount of struggle for your kid. You don't want to, you're trying to develop within them resilience. And so when struggle comes, don't rescue them from it. If it's an appropriate amount of struggle, this could be a gift. And so if every time struggle comes their way, you're rescuing them, you're not being a good coach. Good coaches want their kids to want their teams to have strong lungs and have great lung capacity and endurance. And as parents, we got to engage in that. But recently we had a meeting. Let me just kind of lay out so we have a couple morning services on Sunday mornings, and I will have, and everyone does this, I will have a meeting occasionally during one of the services. So I had two students who complained to their moms about, man, he's having a meeting during during church. Can you believe that? So they're picking up an offense. This is the culture. You pick up an offense, and instead of the parent reframing, parents don't know how to reframe. They just receive the drama. They engage with the offense. Oh yeah, I can't believe, and they instigate greater offense. Now they've made it worse. And one of these moms literally reached out to my boss's wife and complained. And I had to have a conversation with the mom for about an hour. And the other mom she just talked to all her friends, and it created drama among her friends. And I was like, this is so silly. Like, this is not a deal. This is silly.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, this kind of stuff, it starts to add up to the point where there have been times, now I'm not feeling that right now, but there have been times when there have been enough of these that you just go, this doesn't feel worth it anymore. And I know teachers are feeling this, like, this doesn't feel worth it anymore. This is like daily. And this lawnmower parent stuff, and I got to tell you, it's my generation of this is the worst generation of parents I have ever seen. Like, and I'm just telling you, and this is just from one person's point of view, and I'm not saying previous generation parents were good. My parents had no clue where I was 10 hours a day. But I'm just saying, this generation of parents, dude, I worry about them, because they are constantly worrying about their kids and removing everything.
The kid who's nervous about coming, and so their parent will just relent to their statement of, well, I'm too anxious to go try this thing, or I've been once and I'm too nervous to go back. And so they just relent to that, and then the kid never comes back, and then the parent wonders why they have no interest in church or aren't engaged at all in their faith, because they don't have them push through that moment. They don't say, well, let's do this for a few months and then we'll evaluate, or let's make an effort. Do you talk to anybody when you go? Do you make an effort? And the other one is cell phones. We have policies around our trips. Cell phones do not come on our trips. And, I think it's the most genius thing we've ever done. I would fight for that every day of the week. But there's always a few parents who not only will request, and I'm accepting for like a medical thing or something like that. Okay, there are exceptions. But parents who are like, I can't bear to be out of contact with my child for 48 hours. There's got to be an issue. That can't be healthy. I mean, for all of history, minus the last 13 years, 15 years, that was the case, right?
Dude, last night at the Coldplay concert, Chris Martin, the lead singer, said, okay, for just this one song, put your cell phone away. Let's let this moment just be us. Just one song. Let's let it be us in the room only.
Did the crowd listen?
So everyone cheered. We put our phones away. And about 30 seconds in, I started noticing people pulling out their phones. And I'm like, oh, my God.
Wow.
Are you kidding me?
Wow.
We have a problem.
I think it's interesting because I think building resilience in kids, at least in the parenting things that I read, it's kind of a hot topic in contrast to, how are we going to combat mental health? Well, it's building resilience when they're young and things like that. And it seems like it's a very like present and now conversation. But I did a degree in early childhood education like 20 years ago. And one of the things, this is so interesting, that they taught us in one of my preschool teaching classes was that every year you should buy a goldfish and you should let that goldfish die. And your preschoolers should experience death on that small scale to build resilience. Like, I mean, it sounds so crazy and terrible, but in a way, I'm like, yeah, they should experience what death is of a goldfish before a grandparent, you know? So it's like we've been teaching this actually for a long time and talking about it.
Shannon, are you saying...
I didn't do that.
Wait.
Dude.
I gotta ask, are you saying you buy the goldfish and then you murder it in front of your child, like you sit on the kitchen counter?
Goldfish die.
Or
that's what a goldfish does.
Torture?
It dies.
A goldfish?
You overfeed it. You overfeed it or underfeed it. You let it naturally, quote unquote, die.
Dude, I have a friend who bought his kid a goldfish. The goldfish died, and they snuck and switched the goldfish so their kid wouldn't know that the goldfish had died.
Right. My kid's fish died last year, and I was just like so over taking care of it and cleaning the water, like so over it. And so my husband calls and he's like, "Oh, Goldie died," and I literally I didn't know my kids. I didn't know my kids were in the background, and I'm like, "Am I supposed to be sad?" He's all, "They're crying."
That's so funny. So that is a frustrating thing, though, right? As it because you're encountering it more and more. So it's not like if it were a one-off. Oh, this parent is extra, vigilant or just a worrier. But this is like we're bumping into this.
I have to say, I've raised 3 teenagers, and there were moments when I know I was this parent.
Sure.
And
oh, Steve,
if I could, if I could redo it, I would do it differently. So I guess the question is, what would I tell myself, right, in that moment when it feels so weighty and you care so much about your kid? It's not done maliciously towards you, Brock. It's really they care about their kid somehow, or maybe
totally.
Maybe it is, but
no. I think it is complete. It really isn't directed at we don't like Brock. I don't feel that at all. I'm just ridiculously annoyed by the drama I had to go through.
Sure. Yeah. So how do we redirect and instruct and correct in a loving way that doesn't feel like we're judging them and doesn't dismiss maybe a legitimate concern, but slowly builds a sense of resilience in their kids?
I think one question to ask a parent is sort of maybe to try to figure out where it's coming from a little bit. Like, obviously it's coming from love, but I have a parent that said to me something like, I was exposed to so much, and I feel like my parents forced me to mature too early. And so now I hide all these obstacles from my child. And I was like, well, that's really interesting that's like their reasoning. They've hidden big issues from this child. And so I think it's always good to get to the root of where someone's coming from so that the conversation that proceeds from that, because it's like if that's the reason or whatever the reason is, it's going to change the conversation you have with the parent. But I do think it's educating them in the benefits of allowing your children and teens and youth, whatever, to work through these obstacles and what it does for them in the long run. Because I think as a parent, I know that sometimes I'm so concerned about my child in this moment and I forget the end game. Like, what is the end game? What is the end picture you want for your child? What do you want them to look like as an adult? And I think sometimes we have to remind them that that's also what we're going for. It's not just this moment of first grade reading or whatever,
I think most parents, Shannon, going on what you're saying, most parents are really great people and they love their kids. And so typically, especially as I've gotten older, I've been able to go, you need to let them struggle here and just kind of gently, they're going to be okay. You need to let them work through this themselves. It's important. And I'll hear the parent typically go, yeah, that's so hard. Okay, I'm going to try. I think we can pastor a bit more in these situations.
Mm-hmm. I see it a lot with athletes too. You know, youth sports, parents, coaches, playing time, spot on the roster. It's never fair. That's probably a pastoral moment, right? That's speaking from my experience with my own kids. It's never fair. It never feels fair to you. And so, but maybe I think you're right, Brock. It's like what's going to happen later. Or Shannon, you said this. What the future of that kid is what's to keep in mind. It's not their high school basketball career doesn't really matter. What matters is their character, which is often forged through failure. So those are good pastoral words. I don't know if they're always well received.
They're not always well received.
No, they're not. I've had many conversations with dads over their kids' sports, and it feels like it falls on deaf ears. Until later.
Yeah.
Until later. And the conversations cycle back around when their kids are older. And I've had those conversations with dads that said, you know what? I realized how much importance I placed on that for my kid's life, and it really didn't matter at the time. And I shouldn't have.
Yeah. And as parents, though, we love our kids so much, and what they love, we choose to love. And what their dreams are, we make our dreams. And we just have to be careful with all of this as parents. Keep our eye on the ball, which is a person of character at 26 years old who's self-actualized, they know who they are, and they love Jesus. And there's the goal. Not that they become the best volleyball player in the world.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like, if it happens, that's rad, but yeah. Anyway, this is good stuff, guys.
It is. There's so much more we could say about it, but you know, here we are as seasoned youth ministry veterans. But if you were 26 or 28 and you're seeing this in students and parents are coming to you, how do you parent parents?
Yeah.
If you aren't a parent? That's probably a longer discussion, but you know, what can we say to a young youth worker to encourage them to speak into this? I would be terrified too.
I was terrified. I sometimes, no, I'm less terrified now, but yeah, I remember that struggle very clearly. Like, also, honestly, in my 20s before having kids, I thought I knew better than the like, I was dumb. I was so dumb to think that way. I mean, obviously there's some things that I could see from an outside perspective, but sometimes I'd get so easily frustrated with parenting. And now as a parent, I'm like, oh, take a step back.
I think that's part of it. Is as a young youth worker, it's important that we run our frustrations by trusted, more wiser people. Just to make sure, am I nuts? And sometimes you're going to hear, actually, you're overreacting. This is, and then you gotta, respond accordingly. It's just that, I don't know if, like, Shannon was a youth worker in her 20s during this kind of, it wasn't called lawnmower parenting, but, what was the
parenting?
Helicopter
parenting. And so you probably have more to speak. I was always, during even that phase, I was into my 30s and 40s, and so a little more seasoned, as you say, but it's tough.
I think what you said is so important, though. I think for any human, but as a youth worker, you know, seeing it from other people's perspective. So talking to someone else and being like, hey, share with me what I'm missing, what perspective I'm missing here, before you engage the conversation. Because you might still be right. You might still have really good wisdom in the moment, but what perspective are you missing before you engage that conversation?
Yeah, because you might make it worse.
Yeah.
Which I have.
I have done that as well.
This might warrant more conversation later, but that was really good. Fascinating to think about how we can challenge parents to allow their kids to struggle so that they can build resilience and become the strong young men and women in Christ that we hope they can be.
Can you guys text me on Saturday around 2 p.m. to remind me of this while I'm on the soccer fields? That'd be helpful. Thanks.
So fun.
All right, let's move on to segment 2, which we have affectionately been calling Get to Know Your Sherpa, where we bring each other a question out of the blue and answer it just to get to know each other a little bit better. And today is Brock's turn to bring us the question.
All right.
So what do you got for us, Brock?
I have a question, but maybe I need help in forming the question.
Okay.
So here's the question. If you could have dinner, now we could do this one of two ways, with any living person today. Have dinner with them, hang out, talk, share a meal with any living, but we also could go any living or dead person, any person in history, living or dead, and you could share a meal with them. Who would it be? Do you guys like the living or dead, or living or just dead? There's really 3 options here, and I'm open.
Well, I'll tell you, the first person I thought of was someone that's dead. So
okay, so let's do that.
My
voice. Do you hear my voice?
You okay?
I'm struggling. All right, go.
Well, it's interesting because I did not think of like celebrity, historical, anything like that. And I've never thought this before, but when you asked it, I immediately thought it for some reason. I have a grandfather who I never met because he passed away before I was born. And I just don't know a ton about my family history on that side. And I just have, as I get older, this like desire to know more about where we came from, and these questions I wish I had asked even my grandmother before she passed away too, or suddenly become important to me. And so I wish I could have dinner with my grandpa Jack before he passed away and figure some things out. I've also heard some intimidating stories about him though, so it could be scary a little bit. But no, I think it would be really interesting because our family apparently like came from Yugoslavia, but then there's rumors that they actually fled from Austria, and there's like all this stuff, and I just really love to know. So yeah,
that's a good one.
I don't know if that's that interesting for everyone, but that's what came to my mind.
I don't even know what I'm gonna say yet.
I don't either. I don't either.
To me, like, my mind is, but I love that you immediately go to grandpa. That's awesome.
Was I supposed to say Jesus?
No. Yes, I was. My goal in asking the question was that all of us would say Jesus.
Dead or alive, right? Ooh.
Wow.
Oh.
Oh, gosh. I've asked people this question before, and I can't even remember what I said when I asked it, but this sounds so cliche. I'm going to say Abraham Lincoln.
Oh.
All right.
I would love to hear the wisdom, the processing of the decision making, the ability to withstand criticism, how to bear the weight of the decisions that he made and not go crazy, things like that. I just find that fascinating, especially, if you dropped Abraham Lincoln into the current political realm, what would that be like? I mean, he would barely stand a chance because he wouldn't be a soundbite guy. He would be a thoughtful, reasonable, intelligent politician. So I would just love to have that conversation with him sometime and pick his brain about his life and how he made those decisions.
I like it.
Is that too obvious? That's too obvious a historical example?
That's great.
I would never have guessed that.
Okay.
No. It made me, like, if I were going to have breakfast or a meal with one president, I think I would go, dude, it'd be sick. Have you ever been to Mount Vernon, George Washington's plantation? Mm-hmm. After George Washington's presidency, he opened his house and people could just come over.
I know.
Like, it's insane.
The White House was like that for a long time. You could just stop by the White House and request to speak with the president.
It's crazy. I would like Barack Obama. That would be a very interesting meal. George Bush, I could have a great, or Washington. Those are three good presidents
How
for
about
me
them
to.
all at the same time, Brock? You could have a presidential dinner.
A presidential meal.
That would be awesome.
This. I like the idea of sitting with John the Beloved. That would be super amazing. And just get his perspective. He lived a long time, like they say, well into his 80s. That's interesting. First century, living that long, unusual, if it's true. But Shannon inspired me, so I'm going. My grandpa, who was a missionary, in Argentina for many years, and then became a pastor in the States towards the end of his career. And he went, I saw him being wheeled out on a gurney into the ambulance as he was dying. And he was yelling, "Lord, I'm ready. I'm ready." That's the last thing I ever heard him say. And dude was amazing. And so, Shannon, you inspired me. I'd love to sit down with him.
How old were you when you experienced that?
I was in my mid-20s, about 25. Yeah, it was, anyway. So that's a fun question, guys. You did good. 2 grandpas and a president.
That's awesome.
I like it.
All right, let's move into our final segment for today, which I am calling RSV-Me. So there is an age-old tradition, an age-old thing in student ministry of youth pastors always calling students to invite their friends to youth group. Come on, guys, bring your friends. Come on out on Friday night. Make sure you invite your friends. It's going to be great. Bring your friends. We say it all the time. We've even gone to some extreme measures over the years of offering prizes and awards or whatever.
I'll shave my head if you bring friends.
We had a lot of friends last night. So, But within that, of course, we want to invite new people into our ministries because we want to introduce them to Jesus. We want to build community and so on, teach our kids to love their friends and neighbors. But there's always mixed motivations in that, right? There's always a little part of me, maybe not you guys, but definitely a part of me that loves to have more people there because it makes the ministry look good, makes me feel good about what we've done. And so the motivation is a little bit of kingdom building in the small K, my little kingdom, and kingdom building in the big K, the kingdom of God. And how do we navigate that? And how do we communicate to our students the value of invitation and bringing friends without making it feel like a project or a selfish thing for us? So a lot in that question, but RSV me when it's about us, but we still want kids to bring their friends.
There's a long history, probably since the early 80s, maybe even to the 70s, but probably into the 70s. Okay, I'll shut up, Brock. Where pastors would hire youth pastors to as a growth strategy. So if we have a great youth ministry, it will draw families and it will grow our church. So we were really first employed because FCA and Young Life and Youth for Christ were having these amazing, just incredible, like, crowds of kids. And so pastors were like, dude, let's hire the local Young Life person, the local Youth for Christ person, and then the crowd will come our way. So it was almost like a growth strategy. And that's the cynical version of it. But that is definitely in the DNA, the water of, and the pressure to grow a youth ministry. I mean, you typically don't hear pastors on a Sunday morning begging people to bring their friends. But youth pastors will regularly, we used to do a thing called Buck or Friend Night. Bring a friend or bring a buck. And we rarely collected bucks. Like, we didn't collect dollars. and because everyone brought friends. But yeah, all these strategies but it's that pressure.
Huh. So really, we're just inheriting this bad motivation from all the senior pastors who hired us.
It's that vantage point. I don't want to be too cynical. It sounds very cynical.
Well, it's interesting you say you don't hear senior pastors doing that. We actually do tell people to invite friends from the stage at our church in the main service. And we say that a win for our guest services team is that someone would feel really welcomed, enjoy it, come back and invite a friend, you know? So I think it bleeds into the entire church culture. And I think it's just a really interesting balance of, I think you said this, Steve, of like, what is your motivation, right? Like what's behind that invite? What's the heart of that invite? And are you thinking kingdom minded, or are you thinking numbers? Are you, and where does it come from? Because we are supposed to, go out and tell the world and create disciples and do all those things. And so, but we've come up with really tricky and maybe manipulative strategies along the way that can start to feel like your main purpose instead of what the true purpose of like leading people to Jesus is. And so it gets messy.
It does. I think one of the things that we're guilty of as a student ministry is we celebrate our student ministry a lot. Maybe at times, instead of celebrating Jesus. That's an oversimplification, but we just finished a series called We Are Family, and we've had a lot of new students coming, and our messages have been about bring your friends because we want them to be part of our family, God's family, and our family here because we love to have people here. And I think that's good. We just need to be careful, though, that in the midst of inviting them to be part of our youth group family, that we're also making it about Jesus, inviting them to come follow him, realizing that there's a weight to that call that goes beyond coming to youth group, eating pizza, playing games, and hearing a message. So we need to be aware of that. We're calling people to radically follow the Savior of the world. So be ready for that.
Yeah.
I think that, youth pastors will feel this pressure to grow the youth group, especially 5-10 years ago, youth pastors en masse were being fired for not growing their youth groups. And it's pretty well documented. Now churches can't find youth pastors to hire. And there's maybe a reason for that. But in the midst of culture changing and kids, what Chap Clark calls they've developed the art of living authentic multiple selves. So in one environment, they act one way, and in that environment, it's their true self in that environment, because to be that way makes them feel safest. But in a different environment, they will act completely different, but it's also their true authentic self in that context. And so this art of developing multiple selves, when they come to youth group, it's the only place they can be their spiritual self. I feel safe to be my spiritual self in this environment. So you saying invite your friends? No, I can be me. I can be that spiritual self only here. I can't be that somewhere else. And they're going to ruin it. And so you have this youth pastor, maybe with all great intention of, man, we just want to reach more kids for Christ. And sometimes kids don't help us. And it's because that's the only place they can be their true spiritual self. And so we sometimes bump into that.
Well, and then I think that's where our job in discipling them comes in to, help them become the same person and all there. And that's,
for sure.
That is a part of what they're growing. It's not like they're wrong for being different people and different things. We got to take that like shame out of it, but it is helping disciple them into what does their next step in their faith look like.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, hey, you're not being yourself. And kids will be like, well, which self are you talking about? Because I'm one way at soccer and I'm another way at home and I'm another way. It just depends where I'm at. I don't know which I am yet. And that's the part of discipleship that's called identity formation. And so they should hear who they really are every time they're with us. But it is a thing you bump into.
We're working through this now with our student leadership team. We've challenged them this year to have two people in mind, one kind of in the youth group already that's kind of disconnected, not necessarily that regular in coming, and to be a really good friend to them. And then one outside the youth group that they would love to see either pray for or someday meet Jesus or maybe come to youth group. And both of those for us are wins. And I can see the students kind of starting to understand it. And I'm hoping that what that discipleship process or that challenge grows in them is just a compassion for people around them and eyes to see people around them, and then to realize that it's Jesus who has the answer to their problems. It's Jesus who brings peace to their life. It's the kingdom of God that is beautiful and welcomes people in. And that would be like the bigger win than just coming to youth group. But I think that's a long-term thing, right? That's a long play in the life of somebody as a Christ follower. And so I'm just hoping that students are getting a glimpse of that now so that they will be those kinds of people later. And if they bring their friend on Sunday night, that's awesome, because we would love to have them at youth group, right?
Yeah.
Brock, we were talking offline about the percentage of our students who their families don't come to our church. What's that like for you guys in terms of your youth ministry?
Oh, I would say we have 60% that do not go to our church.
Okay.
And yeah, I would say a good solid 60%.
Okay. How about you, Shannon?
We're probably more like 30%, but then we have this funny little, actually, we probably have at least 15% of that actually go to other churches with their families on Sunday. But Malibu is so small with such small churches that most of them don't have, a lot of them don't have a youth ministry.
Yeah.
So they duck over to ours, or they'll be in ours for certain things and theirs for other things. So we have like a lot of those kids, which is interesting. But yeah.
Ours has increased over the years. We definitely have, I'd say maybe 40-50% of the students who attend regularly on Sundays and Wednesday nights their families are not necessarily associated with Mountain View. And of course, Guy, the senior pastor, would love it if their families did come, right? That goes back to the old model. But their families, they need Christ too. So that's not a bad thing.
Isn't it fun when you see that though? Like recently, there was a kid who's been coming to our youth group for probably 2 years. And all of a sudden, his family has been showing up Sunday mornings.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. And I love when that happens, when the gospel gets into the home. Yeah. Right.
And whether it's right or wrong, those are the wins I'm celebrating in our staff meeting, so that they know, like, hey, what we're doing, this outreach we're doing, it works and it bleeds, into the family. And I think, obviously that's not the only motivation we want to have, but we do have to celebrate those wins. Like, that is a big deal to reach the whole family.
And I think the message that we send upwards to leadership is a welcoming environment that we've been able to create is what draws people in.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that, churches at large do that as well as student ministries can and do for whatever reason. And so, maybe part of our leading up is, hey, we do these things because it helps people feel welcome and included. If the church had the same kind of language or choices or programming or whatever, then maybe we would see the same things happen in other generations too. And that would be a good thing. So I like to think that student ministry often leads the way in church culture when given the freedom to do so.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting that you say that, because the two people who are running our Sunday and adult, like the Sunday morning environment and services for adults, are my husband and I currently, and we are both ex-youth people.
Yeah.
And we are seeing, I mean, it's not about us at all, but we are creating environments that look way more like youth ministry than most churches. And like a little game opener, sometimes, not all the time, things like this. And we're seeing a huge uptick of people who come and say, gosh, this was such a joy-filled, fun environment that I really enjoyed being. We get emails almost weekly, like with those things. I didn't actually process that until you said that. Like, we have really brought youth ministry up to the adult level, because that's what we did, youth ministry, for, 20 years. So it's interesting.
Oh man, I love that. I love that. That's so great. That's so great. All right. Well, as we wrap up today's conversation, we always end every show with the question, what kept you going this week, other than Coldplay and whatever else we've been doing for fun? What kept you guys going this week?
Why is this so hard? Why is this so hard right now? Guys, my mom flew in last night, and just being with her is really, really, really good. And she helps care for me through caring through my children. And anyway, it's great to have her here. And thinking about her coming is what kept me going this week, honestly, because it was hard. It was a hard week. Really, honestly, 2 weeks. I volunteered for way too big a position at our school's PTA, because I thought, gosh, being involved in the school is like the best outreach I can do. And it is now kind of crushing me a little bit in how much commitment I have. So I was looking forward to my mom being here, and that's what kept me pushing through.
I love it. How fun.
Yeah.
For me, this Wednesday, we're heading to Newport Beach for youth group, and we have about 50 kids who have signed up to be baptized.
Oh, wow.
And
that's incredible.
I'm so pumped. It's so just getting all of this together, and
are they all going to fit in the Pacific Ocean, Brock?
I think we'll be fine. So we're just working out all these details, and so a bunch of kids are all coming, and it's going to be a neat night to celebrate these people, these amazing young people who are like, dude, I'm all in. I would love to be baptized, and so it's just been, dude, that's just so fun.
That's awesome.
That's wonderful.
For me, I'd say, I was telling you guys before we started to record, we have 10 high schools in our county, and there's a couple that have always been hard for us to reach. We just don't have many students who attend there. But this fall, we've had students from one of those high schools. It's more the city school of our area, so it's not a clientele or it's not a target group that we've had a lot of success with. And we've had probably 12 kids coming from that specific school, and they seem to love it, and they keep bringing more friends every week. And so I just feel like God is giving us this unique blessing this fall in this particular population that's always been a challenge for us. And so yeah, it's really cool. I think I hope that it changes a little bit of the dynamics and the personality of our group over time, and that would be a cool thing. So yeah,
I love it.
All right. Well, that wraps up our episode 8 of the Youth Ministry Sherpas Coast to Coast. It has been great being with you. If you haven't already, please follow us on Instagram. You can reach out to us at youthministrysherpas@gmail.com. And you should also go to YouTube, because that's important. And what would you do if you went to YouTube?
I think you should smash the subscribe button on YouTube. That's what you should do.
Absolutely. And every other podcast platform. Share, like, tell others about us. We would love to spread the word about the Youth Ministry Sherpas. Hey, hope you guys have an awesome week. We will be back together again very soon. It's been great being with you.
Peace out.
Yay.